That night was supposed to be like any other. Max Bradley was walking home late in the evening after his shift at the restaurant. His headphones drowned out the street noise, and the phone in his hand showed 11:47 p.m. He was tired but content finally, a day off ahead. He turned onto a narrow street, as always, to take a shortcut. But within seconds, his life turned upside down. "Stop. Hands up." A sharp voice shattered the silence. Red and blue lights flashed in front of him. Two police officers jumped out of the car, their hands on their holsters. Max froze. His ears rang, his heart pounded wildly. "What's going on?" His voice trembled, but he tried not to panic. "On your knees, hands behind your head," one of the officers ordered, ignoring his question. Max wanted to explain that he was just going home, but rough hands had already grabbed him, shoved him onto the pavement, and pinned him down with a knee to his back. Pain shot through his body, but fear was even stronger. "Anything in your pockets?" "Just my phone and keys," he gasped. "You match the description," the other officer said coldly. "What description?" "I didn't do anything wrong." But they were already snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. False accusations. Max was taken to the police station. He still didn't understand why he had been arrested. The dim light in the interrogation room pressed on his eyes. Across from him sat a detective with a stone-cold expression. "You were seen near the crime scene. A store on the corner was robbed, and witnesses described a guy who looks like you. But it wasn't me. I just got off work. There's video footage." The detective played the recording. A blurry image showed a figure in a hoodie running into the store. The face was indistinct, but the color of the clothing matched Max's jacket. "This isn't proof. Can't you see it could be anyone?" The court will decide. Max was in shock. He knew he was innocent, but his words carried no weight. He didn't have money for a good lawyer, so he was assigned a public defender, a weary-looking man in his 50s with a troubled gaze. "Listen, Max, your chances don't look good. Witnesses saw someone who looks like you, and the footage isn't in your favor. But I didn't do it. I'll try to get you a plea deal. Maybe you'll get probation." "I won't plead guilty," the lawyer sighed. "In court, everything will depend on the judge and jury. But you should prepare for the worst." Max felt his world collapsing. The trial, a fight for freedom. Jaden Carter sat in the courtroom, his wrists still sore from the cold steel of the handcuffs that had been removed only minutes before. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat like a hammer against his ribs. The stale air in the room did nothing to calm his nerves. In front of him, the judge sat behind her towering bench, an impassive expression on her face. The jury members whispered among themselves, their eyes flickering toward him occasionally, as if they had already made up their minds. His public defender, Richard Hall, leaned in and whispered, "Stay calm. Answer only what you're asked. We'll get through this." Jaden nodded, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. The prosecutor, a tall, sharp-dressed man named Thomas Whitaker, strode confidently to the center of the courtroom. His voice was like a blade as he addressed the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here because the defendant, Jaden Carter, knowingly resisted arrest and assaulted a police officer. We have substantial evidence proving his guilt. This young man is not the victim, he is the aggressor." Jaden clenched his fists under the table. "Aggressor?" The word felt like a slap in the face. Whitaker turned to the first witness, Officer Bradley Kent. The officer, a burly man with a square jaw, took the stand and swore to tell the truth. His uniform was pristine, his posture rigid. He looked every bit the honorable officer of the law. "Officer Kent," Whitaker began, "please describe the events of the night in question." Kent cleared his throat. "My partner and I were patrolling the area when we spotted the defendant behaving suspiciously in an alley. When we attempted to question him, he became aggressive, refused to comply with orders, and resisted arrest. He even tried to strike me before we subdued him." Jaden's mouth went dry. "That's a lie." Hall stood. "Officer Kent, was Mr. Carter armed?" Kent hesitated for the briefest moment. "No, he was not." "Did he ever make a direct attempt to harm you?" Kent shifted in his seat. "He was resisting. I considered it an act of aggression." "But he did not attack you?" Kent clenched his jaw. "No. But he was non-compliant." Hall nodded and turned to the jury. "There is a difference between resisting and aggression. A scared young man being forcibly detained without cause is not the same as an assailant attacking an officer. The jury's expressions remained unreadable. Whitaker smirked and turned on the screen at the side of the courtroom. "Let's look at the body camera footage." Jaden held his breath as the video began to play. The grainy footage showed him walking down the alley, minding his own business. The officers appeared suddenly, ordering him to stop. His voice came through, confused. "Wait, what did I do?" Then, the video cut forward. The screen now showed him pressed against the wall, his hands in the air. The officers forced him down, one knee in his back. The footage showed his struggle, his attempt to turn his head, his muffled words. But then, the footage stopped. Whitaker turned back to the jury. "As you can see, the defendant clearly resisted." Jaden's heart pounded. He turned to Hall. "That's not the whole video. There's more. They cut out the part where they threw me down and hit me." Hall stood. "Your Honor, we request the full footage." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Whitaker, do you have the unedited version?" Whitaker smiled, his expression innocent. "Unfortunately, Your Honor, the footage was corrupted beyond this point." Jaden felt rage boil in his stomach. Lies. Hall turned to his client. "Do you want to take the stand?" Jaden took a deep breath. He knew the risks. They would try to twist his words. But if he didn't speak, they would only have the officer's version of the story. He stood. The courtroom felt colder as he sat in the witness box. Hall approached him calmly. "Jaden, in your own words, tell us what happened." Jaden swallowed the lump in his throat. "I was walking home. I had my headphones in. I didn't even hear them at first. When I turned around, they told me to stop. I didn't understand why. I asked them what was going on, and before I knew it, they grabbed me, shoved me against the wall, and put me in cuffs. I never resisted. I was just scared." Hall nodded. "Did they tell you why they were detaining you?" "No." "Did you strike either of them?" "No. I never laid a hand on them." Hall stepped back, looking at the jury. This is a young man who was walking home. Not a criminal. Then Whitaker stepped forward. "Jaden, isn't it true that you refused to comply immediately?" I just asked what was going on. But you didn't follow their orders right away. I was confused. You were resisting." Jaden's fingers dug into the wooden stand. "No. I was scared." The judge sighed. "We will now hear closing arguments." Whitaker straightened his suit. "We find the defendant." Jaden closed his eyes. Everything in his life had led to this moment. Not guilty. Jaden's next battle. Jaden barely registered the words at first. Not guilty. It felt unreal. His breath came in sharp gasps as a wave of relief crashed over him. He was free. Hall patted his shoulder. "It's over." But as Jaden looked around the courtroom, he realized it wasn't over. Not really. The officers who had lied, the prosecutor who had twisted the truth, the system that had tried to bury him, it was all still there. Officer Kent's jaw was tight as he left the courtroom, his eyes burning with resentment. Whitaker merely adjusted his tie, already moving on to his next case, as if Jaden's life had been just another statistic to him. Jaden turned to Hall. "What happens now?" Hall sighed. "You go home. Try to move on." But how could he? His name had been dragged through the mud. He had spent weeks in jail, awaiting trial. His job was gone. His reputation was in shambles. Even though he had won, he still felt like he had lost. And then there were the others. The ones who weren't so lucky. The ones who didn't have even a sliver of video evidence to prove their innocence. As Jaden stepped out of the courthouse into the fresh air, he made a decision. He wasn't going to move on. He was going to fight back. A new purpose. The days after the trial felt strange. Jaden was free, but he wasn't the same person who had walked home that night, expecting an ordinary evening. He scrolled through news articles about his case. Some painted him as an innocent man wrongfully accused, but others called him a troublemaker, a young man with a history of resistance. Lies. He had no record, no history of trouble. But that didn't matter to the people who already decided who he was. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, steady and firm. "Jaden Carter?" "Yeah. Who's this?" My name is Maya Reynolds. I run a legal advocacy group that helps people who've been wrongfully accused. I followed your case." Jaden tensed. And I think you can help us." "Help how?" "You know what it's like to be on the other side of the system. You know what it's like to feel powerless. But you weren't powerless, you fought back. And now, there are people who need someone like you." Jaden's grip tightened on the phone. He thought about the hours in the jail cell, the fear in his gut when they told him the footage was corrupted. He thought about the way the jury hesitated before delivering their verdict, as if innocence wasn't obvious. He had survived. Now, he had a chance to make sure others did too. "I'm listening," he said. "The fight begins." A week later, Jaden walked into a small but busy office filled with old desks and stacks of legal paperwork. Maya greeted him with a nod, gesturing for him to sit. "We work with people who can't afford good legal defense," she explained. "We help them navigate a system that's stacked against them. You don't need a law degree to help, you just need to be willing to fight." Jaden exhaled slowly. "I don't know anything about law." "You know injustice when you see it. That's enough to start." Jaden glanced at the bulletin board behind her, photos of people, names and case numbers scribbled underneath. Some faces were smiling, their cases won. Others, not. He thought about Max Bradley, the name they had mistaken for his in-court documents. He thought about all the other names that had never gotten the chance to be proven innocent. Jaden reached out and shook Maya's hand. "I'm in." And just like that, the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Several months had passed since that fateful day when Jaden stood before the judge and heard the words "not guilty." On the outside, everything seemed as if time had come full circle. Morning light streamed through the windows of his modest apartment, the city awoke, and life continued, but inside him a fire still burned, pulsating with memories of the night when his freedom hung by a thread. After the trial, Jaden was unable to return to normal life immediately. Every morning he woke up with a heaviness in his chest, recalling the cold hands of the police, harsh commands, the noise of sirens, and the indifference of the system. The city, it seemed, continued to live its life, oblivious to the pain of those whom injustice had touched personally. But for Jaden, this ordeal had become a turning point, forcing him to view the world from a different angle. He could not forget those sleepless nights spent in a jail cell, where every sound seemed like an echo of injustice. These memories transformed into a source of inner strength and a determination to change the system. Together with Maya Reynolds, the leader of a human rights organization, he began actively participating in protests and meetings where people shared their stories of brutality and bias. His speeches at rallies, interviews for local media, and blog posts gathered thousands of views. People began to realize how deeply the problem was rooted and how important it was to fight for change. Jaden's personal life was also undergoing changes. The realization of what he had experienced forced him to reassess his values and learn to trust people anew. The support of new friends and like-minded individuals, as well as warm reunions with family, helped heal the wounds of the past. He started exercising, which gave him a sense of control over his body and mind, helping restore his self-confidence. His story soon attracted the attention not only of human rights activists but also of the broader public. Journalists began conducting their own investigations, and posts exposing cases of police brutality and human rights violations started appearing on social media. Public pressure forced the authorities to initiate an internal investigation into the activities of law enforcement agencies. Gradually, new evidence began to emerge that many cases of brutality and unwarranted arrests had taken place, and the culprits had remained unpunished. Jaden became a symbol of resistance and the fight for justice. His name was chanted at protests, his story was quoted in interviews, and young people looked to him for inspiration for their own actions. He began collaborating with lawyers and activists to help those who found themselves in a situation similar to his. Every new case, every exposure of brutality gave him the strength to continue the fight. Looking back, he realized that this process had changed him forever. All the fear, pain, and powerlessness he had experienced turned into a powerful drive for change. Lost years, deprivations, and humiliations became lessons that he used to awaken in people the belief in the possibility of justice. He knew that many difficulties and battles still lay ahead, but he could no longer allow himself to remain indifferent. Thus, one chapter of his life ended, But a new one began, a mission that inspired thousands of people to seek the truth, stand up for their rights, and fight for reforms in a system where even one voice can spark change. His story became not only a testament to his innocence but also a symbol of hope for those who believe that light can overcome darkness, even in the most hopeless circumstances.